Have you ever really stopped to think about it? How do we actually know what happened hundreds or even thousands of years ago? The past is gone, right? The people are silent. So, how on earth do we read their stories? Well, that's the big mystery we're diving into today.
The historian E.H. Carr put it perfectly. He said that history is an unending dialogue between the present and the past. And that right there is the heart of it. History isn't just a dusty collection of facts locked away in a book. Nope, it's a living, breathing conversation that's happening right now between our world and the world of yesterday.
So that's the big question, isn't it? If the past can't actually talk, how do we listen in on that conversation? We're going to tackle this whole thing like a detective story, hunting for the clues and the methods that let us hear those echoes from long ago. So, where does any good investigation begin? Well, before you can look for clues, you need a map. And in history, our map is time. We've got to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of what we're dealing with to really put things in perspective. Okay, take a look at this. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. You can see all these huge milestones, the planet forming, oxygen appearing, the first vertebrates. Now look all the way over at the very, very end. See that impossibly thin sliver? Yeah, that's us. Homo sapiens have only been around for about 300,000 years. It's a really humbling reminder that we are just the most recent chapter in an incredibly long story. So how do we even measure our tiny slice of time? You're probably used to seeing BC and AD, but today, historians and academics have kind of shifted to a more global and inclusive standard, BCE, which stands for Before Common Era, and CE for Common Era. Don't worry, the system works exactly the same way. The dividing line is still the traditional year 1. CE counts forward from there, just like AD did, and BCE counts backward, just like BC. It's really just about having one universal standard for a field that studies the whole world. But here's where it gets a little weird. There's this fascinating little quirk in how we count. Get this, our calendar has a hidden secret. There's no year 0. It just jumps directly from 1 BCE right into 1 CE. It's this little missing piece that can totally trip you up if you're not careful. And yeah, that missing year 0 totally changes the math. To figure out the time between a date in BCE and one in CE, you can't just add them together. You've got to follow these 3 simple steps. Take your BCE date, add the CE date to it, and then, this is the important part, subtract 1. So, for instance, the Buddha was born around 560 BCE. To find out how long ago that was, we'd add 560 to our current year, 2024, and then subtract 1. That tells us it was about 2,583 years ago. See? Simple. Okay, so we've got our timeline straight. Now let's meet the crew, the people who do the digging, both literally and figuratively. These are our history detectives, the experts who bring the past roaring back to life. First up, we've got the geologist. Think of them as the crime scene investigators. They're the ones who read the story of the Earth itself, you know? These study the layers of rock and soil to give us the physical context, the stage where all of human history actually played out. Then you have the archaeologist. These are your boots-on-the-ground field agents. They are literally in the trenches, carefully digging up the physical leftovers of the past. Things like tools, pottery, the foundations of buildings, even bones. They're the ones who find the hard evidence. And finally, the person who helps make sense of it all is the anthropologist. They take the objects that archaeologists find and ask, okay, but what does this tell us about the people? They piece together entire cultures, social structures, and beliefs, turning a pile of artifacts into a profoundly human story. All right, so we've met our team of detectives. Now for the fun part. Let's look at the clues they actually work with. It's time to crack open the evidence locker of history. Before we get into all the technical terms, let's just bring it home for a second. Think about your own family. How do you know about your past? You look at old photos, right? You listen to stories from your grandparents. Maybe you have an old watch or a recipe that's been passed down. Those are your sources. Well, historians do the exact same thing, just on a much, much bigger scale. So, the first big category of evidence in our locker is what we call archaeological sources. Pretty straightforward, these are the physical clues, the actual stuff that people made, used, and left behind. And wow, the variety here is just incredible. A single tiny coin can tell you who was in charge and how far their trade routes stretched. A massive monument can tell you about a civilization's ambition, their gods, their power. Every single object, big or small, is another piece of the puzzle. But, objects alone can't tell us the whole story. For that, our detectives need the second major category of evidence, literary sources. We're talking about the written record. This is where we get the narrative, the voice. Ancient manuscripts, poems, religious texts, the journals of travelers seeing new lands for the first time. These give us a direct window into what people were actually thinking and feeling. They give us the story and the context that a simple pot or tool just can't. So, let's recap. We have our detectives, and we have our two main types of clues, physical stuff and written stuff. Let's put it all into practice and solve a quick case, the story of the very first humans. For almost the entirety of our existence as a species, this was life. We were hunter-gatherers, living in small nomadic groups, always on the move. How do we know that? Well, our clues are all archaeological. We find their sharpened stone tools, animal bones from their meals, and of course, those incredible paintings they left on cave walls, giving us a breathtaking glimpse into their world. But then, about 12,000 years ago, as the planet warmed up, everything changed. We figured out how to cultivate plants and domesticate animals. This was the dawn of agriculture, and you really can't overstate what a game changer this was. For the first time ever, we could settle down in one place. This led to the first villages, which paved the way for, well, for everything we call civilization today. And we see it all in the archaeological record. New kinds of tools, pottery for storing grain, and the remains of permanent homes. And that brings us right back to where we started. By combining all these different clues, we can piece together these incredible stories of human transformation. It proves that history isn't about memorizing a bunch of answers. It's an ongoing process, this unending conversation of asking new questions and searching for more clues. At the end of the day, we are the detectives of the past, trying to make sense of the fragments our ancestors left behind. But it makes you think, right? What clues are we leaving behind for the historians of the future? What will our digital footprints, our plastic waste, our sprawling cities, what will all that tell them about who we were? Now that is something to think about.